COP-5 that will take place from the 30th of October to the 3rd of November this year. And with these information sessions, we would like to give you some more information on some of the topics that will be discussed at COP5. And there were two information sessions last Friday, 8th of September, on financial resources and mechanism, and on national reporting. And there will be another session today after this one on effectiveness evaluation. So we have a presentation for you, and then we will take questions at the end. Here you may have seen the previous slide on some housekeeping notes, so you can put your questions in the chat, and we will keep them. We will keep an eye on the chat during the presentation, and at the end of the session, you will be able to raise your hand, and you will receive a request that will allow you to open your microphone and ask your questions orally. Just also to mention that this session will be recorded and will be made available on the website and on our YouTube channel. And I would like also to say that my colleague Marian Bailey is very sorry that she cannot take part in the presentation today, but she is listening closely. And you may even see her online. So with that, I will invite Monica, our Executive Secretary, to open the meeting and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria Irene, and dear parties, stakeholders. Let me warmly welcome you to this deep dive session related to artisanal and small-scale gold mining. We have now around 40 minutes to take a closer look on the progress achieved on this matter, in particular since our previous COP, but also in view to preparing ourselves to the discussion of this agenda item at the upcoming COP5. This part of the convention work is extremely important, and this is because for SGM, the use of mercury is really big. So it's both the use that it's extensive, but also emissions and releases to the environment are the major source of mercury to the environment. So it does, of course, deserve attention, and there is such attention given to this topic in our convention. I'm very pleased to note, and we will learn more about it during this session, about substantial progress that have been achieved by parties and stakeholders working on this issue. And we can see it through a number of notifications to the Secretariat on SGM being more than insignificant. We see it through preparation and submission of national action plans. And this is all also taking place thanks to the great support through our financial mechanism. So there is a progress. SGM plans are being put forward, and the big task for the future is to get them implemented. So there is a positive effect and impact on the ground. Let me perhaps continue by showing and presenting when during the Conference of the Parties this item will be addressed. This is a COP5 tentative schedule of work. This schedule you will find in annex to the annotated agenda for the COP, and it does present the overall schedule. We have marked with a highlight the item, artisanal small-scale gold mining, that will be discussed by the parties and COP on Monday in the afternoon as the last item. Let me then move on to the next slide. So this is the actual topic for our session, and I would like to kick off the presentation by reminding ourselves also what I already mentioned, how big the scale of the challenge is. The emissions from the sector amount to nearly 40%, and this is based on the data you are well familiar with. This is the statistics and data from the UNEP Global Mercury assessment, data representing 2015. And this is really an issue that is a global challenge. But let us move on to maybe providing some further details on how our convention addresses and what are the requirements of the convention towards parties. And let me then hand over to Maria Arin to continue with the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monica. If I may have the next slide. Thank you. And I will provide you an overview of the core article of the convention that covers ASGM. And I'm sure that you all know by now that it's Article 7 that applies to ASGM, artisanal and small-scale gold mining and processing. So this is important because it covers both mining and processing, in which mercury amalgamation is used to extract gold from ore. And Article 7, Paragraph 2, you will see at the bottom, the top of the slide that says that parties that have ASGM using mercury amalgamation in their territories are required to take steps to reduce and, where feasible, eliminate the use of mercury and mercury compounds in and emissions and releases to the environment of mercury from such mining and processing. And then, very importantly, we have the paragraph 3 of Article 7 of the Convention that states that the party that determines that ASGM using mercury amalgamation is more than insignificant in its territory shall notify the Secretariat of the determination, first point. Second, shall develop and implement a national action plan that we call the NAP in accordance with Annex C of the Convention. Then third, it shall submit its National Action Plan, its NAP, to the Secretariat no later than 3 years after the entry into force of the Convention for the party, or 3 years after the notification to the Secretariat, whichever is later. And there is a final point of paragraph 3 of Article 7 that is about providing a review after 3 years of the progress made in meeting its obligations under Article 7, and including such reviews in the reports that are submitting according to Article 21 of the Convention. And here you can see that the wording that a convention uses, more than insignificant, is not defined under the Convention, and it's up to the parties themselves to determine when ASGM is more than insignificant. With the next slide. So this slide wants to summarize Annex C requirements for NAPs, and you can see that, of course, Annex C is very detailed and provides a lot of information that you can see listed here in the slide on the elements that shall be included in the NAP, and the set of strategies as well. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see that there is also an optional element that can be included in the NAP. And in the interest of time, I will not be reading all the elements, but you have them in the presentation. Next slide. What is important is in this slide is that I'm sure most of you know there is a guidance document for developing and implementing NAPs. And this was agreed at COP-1 and is available, of course, on our website under the implementation tab. There is a golden arrow pointing to it. And COP4 adopted the guidance with updated sections on health strategies, which was developed by the WHO, World Health Organization, and on sound tailings management in ASGM, which is a complementary technical document that UNEP, in collaboration with the Secretariat and the Global Mercury Partnership, developed and presented at COP4 as Information Document 6. Next slide. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so for COP-5, we have prepared a decision document on ASGM, as well as 4 information documents that you can see listed on the left-hand side of the slide, and that are relevant for this agenda item. That will be agenda item 4C on ASGM. And I will describe them briefly. So starting with document 5/6, this provides information on the status of implementation of Article 7, Paragraph 3, and the needs going forward. And the document provides a big picture overview and does not provide information on each and every individual NAP of the parties. And the document also provides information on the work that has been undertaken pursuant to decision 4 of COP-4, paragraph 2, which calls upon parties to engage indigenous peoples, local communities, and other relevant stakeholders in the development and implementation of NAPs, and also paragraph 3, which requests the Secretariat to compile views on the needs and priorities of indigenous peoples and local communities with regard to the use of mercury in ASGM. And my colleague Manuela will talk more about this topic later in the session. Next slide. Okay, so we would like to show you some details that are relevant to frame where we are in terms of notifications according to Article 7.3. So as I said earlier in my presentation, when a party determines that ASGM using mercury in its territory is more than insignificant, then it notifies the Secretariat. And that is the first point. And the notification is normally a formal communication that the party, the government, sends to the Secretariat. And all the notifications are posted on our website under the Parties tab. And maybe this is also a good time to mention that our website has changed its name and it's now minamataconvention.org instead of the previous name that was mercuryconvention.org. So in terms of notifications, we have 44 parties that have notified that ASGM is more than insignificant. And you will see that is one party more than the number we have in the COP documents. So the COP document said 43, but we now have 44 because another party notified the Secretariat after the COP documents were completed. And we also have 7 non-parties that have notified the Secretariat about this. And the reason why it is important that also non-parties notify the Secretariat is because non-parties that are signatories to the convention but have not ratified the convention yet may still be able to access support for the development of their NAPs by the Global Environment Facility, the GEF. Another important message here is that for the parties, the date of notification triggers a deadline, and that is the deadline for submitting the NAP to the Secretariat, and it's 3 years after notification. Or if the notification is sent prior to the country becoming a party, the deadline is 3 years after the entry into force of the convention for that party. Next slide. Okay, so we have just talked about notifications. Now I would like to show you a few figures about submissions. So we have 27 parties that have submitted their NAPs to the Secretariat, and also 3 non-parties that have submitted their NAPs. And all these NAPs, of course, are published on the Minamata Convention website. And we have also 10 parties who have notified the Secretariat that ASGM is more than insignificant, but have not submitted their NAPs by the deadline. And we are contacting them and, of course, working very closely with them to have the NAPs submitted. And for many of these parties, their NAPs have been completed, and in some cases, they're even being implemented. But for various reasons, there are some delays in being formally submitted to the Secretariat. Next slide. Okay, so this slide just wants to show you where the submitted NAPs are on our website. You can go to the Parties tab under National Action Plans, and you can also see that there's a tab on notifications, and you will find all the notifications and national action plans there. Next. Okay, this is a dashboard, is a picture of a dashboard that we very much like to show all the time, and it was developed by our UNEP colleagues of the NAP Global Component, and it shows that 48 NAP projects have been funded and are in progress, and 13 NAPs, National Action Plans, submitted to date. Next slide. This is another very important slide, and it talks about the additional requirement that is present in Article 7 of the Convention for those parties that have submitted a NAP to the Secretariat. So these parties have to provide a review of the progress made, not only in implementing their NAPs, but also in implementing Article 7 as a whole. And the deadline for providing these reviews is 3 years after the submission of the NAP. And we can already tell you that of the 27 parties that have submitted their NAPs to the Secretariat so far, this year some parties are reaching, let's say, the deadline, when these reviews should be undertaken. And this is based, of course, on when they submitted their NAPs. And we are encouraging those parties to submit the results of these reviews with the short national reports that are due by the end of December of this year. And if that is not possible, with the full national reports that will be due in a couple of years. And we, if I can still have the previous slide. Thank you. So we at the Secretariat, and of course our colleagues who work in supporting NAP projects, have heard from a number of parties that they are not sure exactly what these reviews should look like and what they should contain and how they should be carried out. And it is true because the convention does not particularly design in the convention how these reviews should be made and what format they should follow, what structure, what required elements they should contain. But we still think that these reviews are very good opportunities for parties, for example, to update their baselines or to assess the progress towards reduction targets or to highlight some implementation challenges. So we very much encourage the submission of these reviews, and you can also, parties whose reviews are due can also refer to a section in the existing NAP guidance on how to evaluate the progress made under the NAP. And we know that, and we believe that it may be useful to have a supplementary guidance, and we are also aware that the GEF, as part of the funding for NAP projects for enabling activities, could support the development of a pilot testing of this guidance and perhaps also support parties in undertaking their first reviews. With that, I will move to the next slide that just wants to summarize for you the information that I've presented up to this point. So as I said, we have 44 parties notifications under Article 7.3, 51 if we can't count non-parties. And the ideal situation, of course, would be that, and we hope that will happen very soon, is that the 3 columns on the left-hand side become even, meaning that the parties who notify the Secretariat according to Article 7, paragraph 3, also have their NAP projects, and eventually they submit their NAP, their national action plans once completed. And of course, we would love to see the column on the late NAPs disappear and the review columns to go up once the reviews are available and start to be completed. And the very important message here is about the fact that the NAP documents are not only documents that are completed and submitted and then parties forget about those, but they also have to be implemented. And the Planet Goal projects, for example, are a very important source of support when it comes to implementation to Article 7. With the next slide. I think this is my last of this part of the presentation, and it's about 2 information documents that are relevant for this item and that we have prepared for COP-5. And this is information document 6, which is the result of a collaboration with the UNEP Chemicals and Health Branch, especially through their work on app development and global management, global knowledge management. And it's a very useful dashboard that I showed you earlier, and that it contains a lot of information, and I will speak more about that later in this presentation. And then there's INF7, Information Document 7, on technology transfer experiences from the countries taking part in phase 1 of the GEF-funded Planet Gold. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague Manuela, who will talk a bit more about the work connecting ASGM and indigenous people and local communities. Manuela, over to you.
Thanks, Irene. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. And I would like to talk a little more about the work stream of the Secretariat, as Irene said, that links indigenous peoples and local communities with Mercury in ASGM. If you recall, we also saw it earlier today, there was this work started that has its origin in decision from COP-4, so the last meeting, and it's decision number 4 on ASGM. And you can see the text on your screen. It calls upon parties to engage indigenous peoples, local communities, and relevant stakeholders in the development and implementation of NAPs. And it also has a request to the Secretariat to compile views and needs on the needs and priorities of indigenous peoples and local communities with regard to the use of Mercury. So just to recall, because it's such a new topic under the convention, not new in the sense of importance, but new in the sense that we actually have actionable items. I'd like to build around these 2 requests in the next slide, please. So we started by try to give effect to these 2 elements in the decision, including a request to the Secretariat. We undertook a number of activities during the intersessional period, primarily and first and foremost, which is fairly challenging, is to connect, to map where those indigenous communities and local communities are, and if and how much they're related to ASGM. What's their relationship to ASGM? Are they miners, or are they being, or is mining happening on their territories? And if so, does it have their consent or not? So our work started by establishing this network and mapping the different relationships and needs and priorities. To do so, we created the Indigenous Peoples Platform. It's still in its early stages, but it's a platform that we hope will become very active in reaching out and networking with these indigenous peoples. You can see the link. My colleague just posted the link in the chat to this platform, and we try to keep posting news every time there is a news that's related to indigenous peoples and local communities, but we also hope that eventually it will be a more dynamic platform. We also undertook a study to collect views, needs, and priorities of indigenous peoples and local communities with regard to ASGM and Mercury. We had a side event at the GEF Assembly a few weeks ago in Vancouver, and we are going to have our first ever dedicated meeting for indigenous organizations to discuss and to prepare for a COP. This is going to take place in Brasilia. It's going to focus on indigenous organizations of Latin America and the Caribbean. But we hope that with this experience, if it's positive and if there's funding, of course, we can expand this to other regions in the future. And here I would like also to thank the 3 countries and governments who have made this work possible through various contributions to the various bits and pieces of this work, which was Australia, Norway, and Sweden. If I could have the next slide, please. We also, in addition to the main working document and the information documents that my colleague already mentioned, we also have 2 information documents related to this issue. It's information 8 and 9. 8 provides an overview of the intersessional work to map the indigenous peoples and local communities' relationships to ASGM and their needs and priorities. as well as highlight some possible future actions. If this document is not yet available, I hope it will become available in our website within the next week. The information number 9 is a technical document on how to monitor mercury in and around ASGM sites. And it is very much related also to the need to cooperate with indigenous peoples, local communities, as well as other stakeholders throughout the monitoring initiatives and programs. Next slide, please. So with this mapping exercise that we've done, the first conclusion, and it's relatively probably obvious, but I would like still to reinstate it because it's so important, is that there's a range of relationships between indigenous communities and local communities with ASGM. And that results in different priorities and needs. The relationship, you can think of in terms of geography, for example. There are those who are close to ASGM sites and that will be directly and indirectly impacted by mercury. Within those, they can either be engaged in the mining activities themselves as a community. They may be on the other extreme, that they are their lands and territories are being mined without their consent, but they can also be there in between. There are many communities where some members, especially younger people, want to mine because they see it as an economic opportunity, but the community itself has not given consent. So there is this rift, this fracturing of within the communities themselves. So this is also, there are many associated problems depending on their relationship with ASGM, but in particular when it's done on their territories without the consent from the communities, that it brings a lot of violence. And this is something that it's coming over and over again. This is, of course, for some of the communities, is the primary needs that they have. Others who are engaged in the mining activities, they are interested in having alternative technologies that can replace mercury or that can capture mercury and not when it's burning, that they burn inside their houses, for example, that it doesn't go into the air. One thing though that's fairly clear also is that no matter where the indigenous peoples or local communities sit in this scale of relationships, they all are asking for improved health services, more awareness raising. There is a lot of confusion. They don't understand, many of them don't understand the full range of effects or how they get exposed to mercury yet. They would like adequate monitoring. And when I say adequate, it's not about the frequency. It's also monitoring in a way that respects their cultures. In many cultures, for example, cutting the hair is not seen as something that they can do. So it's very important to have any monitoring as well as health services that are culturally appropriate as well accessible. The development of alternative livelihoods, especially for communities that are not fully engaged into ASGM activities, but also for those who are, they would like to have alternatives, either because the price of gold fluctuates or because they would like to be able to have different options because some of the members don't want to mine. And another very important issue is the participating in the planning and decision making. And this goes tied up with the request from COP to engage indigenous peoples, the encouragement to parties to engage indigenous peoples and local communities in the development and implementation of NAPs. If I could have the next slide, please. So I will try to speed up a bit. Just to show here a few publications, this is one of the information documents. It talks about monitoring. If I could have the next one, please. I just want to leave some time for the discussion because it's also very important. This is another publication talking about the socioeconomic impacts of mercury pollution on fisheries and livelihoods, because many of the indigenous peoples depend on those livelihoods as well. Next slide, please. Very quick, trying to link indigenous peoples and local communities with Mercury and the SGM, but also broader environmental goals. And here, just to recall that the objective of the convention is to protect human health, but also to protect the environment. So I was talking a lot about human health so far, but let's turn very quickly to protection of the environment. And this is slides that I borrowed from an NGO called IEP in Brazil, that they are working very closely with many communities. And on the left side, you will see in green, it's the indigenous territories in the Amazon, not only in Brazil, but in the entire Amazon basin. And in brown, light brown, you see these are protected areas. And in between, you see these dotted things. These are deforestation happening outside of the protected areas and indigenous territories. So it's very important, both the protected areas and indigenous territories. Just to note, this deforestation is general deforestation, not talking about the SGM. Just to give you an idea, now if you could turn your eyes to the right side of the screen, it's just to show you how important indigenous peoples are in the conservation for broader environmental goals, such as biodiversity conservation and climate change. What you see there, it's an example of a national park in Brazil, and in green. And in the last few years, there was only one ranger taking care of that entire area, which is almost half of the size of the French Guiana. What you see in light pale green is one indigenous territory. It's the Wayampi territory, where they have 120 communities and nearly 2,000 people living there. So even though it's much smaller, they have they're the owners, they're the guardians of that territory, and they can monitor much better than areas that are even protected areas. So just to put things into perspective. Think the next slide, please. So very quick again, just to recap, indigenous peoples and local communities are among the most vulnerable populations to mercury exposure and its impacts, either through their health, but also it impacts their livelihoods and cultures. They need a tailored approach or a tailored approach is needed urgently to address the issue of mercury in ASGM in connection with indigenous peoples and local communities. And the number one priority is awareness raising. Also, number two, as we see this is our perspective based on our study. Of course, we need to gather more views, also from other regions, because most of the work was focused in Latin America only, and in Africa to some extent. But we need to expand. But the emerging conclusions are this. And number two is improved medical services and monitoring. Three is alternative solutions to the economic solutions, alternative livelihoods. And four is inclusive decision-making. Just regarding awareness raising and improved medical services, just to recall, they must be aligned with their own cultural patterns, values, customs, and worldviews. With regards to inclusive decision-making, it's the idea of providing the free prior informed consent before any ASGM activities takes place in their territories, and participate in the development and implementation of NAPs, as well as review of Article 7. If I could have the next slide, please. Let me turn your attention now back to COP, and this is what we put forward in the annex to the working document. This is a draft decision that the COP may wish to consider. It includes four general paragraphs that, when I say general, sorry, it's just because it's not related to indigenous peoples directly, but the umbrella work that Irene, my colleague Irene, presented. And the first element of this draft decision is to encourage timely submission of NAPs and reviews of implementation. Irene spoke a lot about this. I think everyone understands the importance of that. The second is to request the GEF to support parties in undertaking their first reviews. This is very important. This would be this is an obligation under the convention, so this would be an enabling activity. This fits very much into the program of the GEF, and it could be, and this is seed money for example, for countries to conduct consultations and drafting of their reviews, to prepare those reviews. as my colleague also said, there is no, it's so far we don't have, parties don't have much guidance on how to do those reviews. Third is to highlight opportunities to advance implementation of Article 7 in the context of projects on biodiversity, land degradation, international waters and trade. So it's moving beyond the chemicals and waste focal area to having multi-focal area GEF projects that can also bring co-benefits to these other areas. And finally, is a request to the GEF to continue to advance the implementation of NEPs through projects and programs. The Planet Gold program is one very, very welcome and important program in this area. The next slide, please. It is still in the suggested action for the COP, but these are more focused on the work that we've done on indigenous peoples and local communities. The first one is that parties may wish to be encouraged, or the COP may wish to encourage parties to obtaining the free, prior informed consent of indigenous peoples and local communities before ASGM activities take place in their territories, developing alternative sustainable economic livelihoods, cooperation pertaining to the international trade of mercury, in particular diverting mercury into use in ASGM if it's deemed illegal by the country, as well as those were things that parties may wish to consider and an encouragement to parties, but also two things related to more to the Secretariat, which is the engagement and the development of supplemental guidance on how to the participation of indigenous peoples, local communities, and other stakeholders in the development and implementation of NEPs. This is building on the previous COP decision, as well as continued engagement with indigenous peoples and local communities with regards to their needs and priorities in relation to the use of mercury in ASGM. So this is, as I mentioned before, we need to expand this work to other regions and dig deeper to understand better the different complexities. With that, I will hand over again to Irene, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Manuela, for this very detailed presentation. And I only have a few slides left before I open the floor for any questions you may have. But in these very important slides, I would like to summarize the insights of the work, the great work that our colleagues, UNEP colleagues at the NAP Global component do every day. And you may know that they review all the NAPs that are submitted to the Secretariat and not only extract, but also analyze the very detailed information and data that is contained in the NAPs. And their work has been presented in more details at the Minamata Online session that took place on 31st of May, and that you can find if you did not attend that session, you can still find it on our YouTube channel and website, not only the recording, but also the slides. So I very much invite you to check that Minamata Online session. In the next slide. This is again an invitation to visit the UNEP Global Mercury Partnership website, where the interactive dashboards produced by our colleagues are hosted and available with all the detailed information about the NAPs. With the next slide. I would also like to mention the great work that our colleagues at the Planet Gold program do to support NAP implementation. And not only they assist parties in meeting their obligations under Article 7, but Planet Code is also a knowledge sharing platform where you can find a lot of information that is collected and disseminated about the work on ASGM. And for more information, you can check, of course, the Planet Gold website and the Minamata Online session of 31st of May, where you can, of course, find more information about the Planet Gold, a more detailed presentation on that, and you can find it on our YouTube channel and also our website. With the next slide. Again, just giving you a snapshot of the website of the Planet Gold program, where you can find all the information, resources, materials, and also there is an individual page for each and every Planet Gold country project. They now have a phase 2 that follows phase 1 with the first few countries participating in the Planet Gold program. And with that, I believe we have reached the end of the presentation. So there is still some time for questions. So I would like to open the floor for any questions. I remind you that you can either put your question in the chat, or you can also raise your hand and my colleague Sharifu will send you a message. And by clicking on it, you will be able to unmute yourself and ask your questions. So let me pause here and open the floor. Okay, yes, I can see a question from Miss Immaculate Javier. Sharifu, we can send the request for her to unmute herself.
Yes, her mic is unmuted.
Perfect.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you so much to the Minamata Convention Secretariat for this webinar. And I'm Immaculate from Papua New Guinea. I represent the artisanal sustainable alluvial mining services. It's a local NGO. I just wanted to raise comments about the presentations and specifically to the indigenous peoples, the presentation on that. I've been always on these presentations that UNEP has been presenting so far, and great presentations. We as local people, we've seen these programs like Planet Goal and all this coming up, and I believe the same with all the other countries, especially those of us who are at the local level, who are actual miners and all that. And we've felt that there's probably misrepresentation, or should I say, ASGM is specific to our countries, and what's been implemented at the global level is sometimes not very representative of our countries, the ASGM issues we face and all that. So we've decided to form a global community of miners to identify ourselves in our local mining communities. And I'm saying this because, like, in a era now, we are connected to the digital communications and all this. I mean, it's very easy for us to be at least represented well at these global forums, and we feel that we are not well represented. So we've decided to form this forum. It's a global forum of community miners representing miners in our countries. There are leaders of mining communities. There are leaders of national mining associations. And we've come to form this global forum. So I just wanted to mention that whatever programs you are doing, and if you need to reach out to us, we are not yet formalized, but there are 11 countries already in this forum. We're just trying to educate ourselves, see where things are working, and we try to share knowledge amongst ourselves, understand our own language as people, as miners working in our local communities, to share this knowledge. We totally appreciate what the global community is doing from your levels, but we just feel that we need to be represented well. And so we've come up with this forum. It's growing. It's including countries, and so far we have 11 countries. Hopefully we get it registered properly and launched, and so we can probably work with the UNEP or the programs, the great programs that you all are initiating at the global or at the international level. So I just wanted to highlight that point. Thank you.
So much, Immaculate. Please, Manuela.
Thanks. Immaculate, thank you so much for this. It's really the type of connections that I'm hoping to establish. And I posted my email in the chat, also for anyone else, if you would like to discuss more our work with indigenous peoples, local communities in the context of ASGM and Mercury, please email me. It's really, really important. I mean, this type of contacts make all the work that goes into these presentations worth it, because it's really an important part of the work is to hear the views of who is on the ground. So please do contact me, Immaculate. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We have African regions, the Asia Pacific regions, and yeah, in this forum, and hopefully we reach to the Latin American and others. So sure, I will send you an email. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Manuela, and thank you, Immaculate, for your comment. And I don't see any other questions in the chat, nor any hands raised. So I believe we can close the session. Just to remind you that right after this session, there will be another information session on effectiveness evaluation. You will see my colleague Manuela there. And feel free, of course, to email any of us at any time if you need more information about the Minamata Convention and also the work we do, COP-5 documents and preparations. And if you have any trouble finding our webinars on the website. So thank you so much to all the participants, and I hereby close the meeting. Have a great day, everyone.